If I could have a moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you. If I could ask everybody, if you have a phone, if you put it on silence or vibrate or mute or throw it out the window, just if you would, just keep it quiet. Do a roll call, and be starting with Commissioner Stephen today.
Here.
Commissioner Culberson.
Here.
Commissioner Cos.
Here.
I'm here, and Commissioner Doug Smith.
Here.
Public comment. I don't believe there was anyone here that was signed up for public comment, was there, Mark? Okay. Then I'll go to administrative business, Eagle Crossing subdivision.
Commissioners, this is on from last week. The Commission had asked to place this on for this week for a brief discussion. As you're aware, when the roads were built in the Eagle Crossing subdivision, our inspector went out and looked at them and had some exceptions to the quality of the roadway and made some recommendations prior to us accepting them into our inventory that they make some improvements to the roads. In working with the developer, we came to a kind of a compromise on that. The developer signed an agreement that said they would do, I think I'll call it a slurry seal. It's a bog seal, slurry seal mix. And I guess after that agreement was signed, sometime in the last couple of months, the developer has decided that they would prefer not to do that, even though we do have an agreement in place, and so had reached out. So that's where it's at. From staff's perspective, we have an agreement. It was signed, and that's what we intend to follow with, unless we get direction from the commission otherwise.
Well, I just wondered, can the developer pay for Olson to look at it again and give an opinion?
Well, I think that they could. I think when Olson made their original recommendation, they had a recommendation to do quite a bit more extensive work than what we compromised on. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what the cost of the slurry seal is, but I think at the time we had an estimate of like $25,000, $26,000, $27,000. I'm sure it's up now. To have an inspection done is not going to be free either, but if that's what the commission would like to do, to reconsider what was already agreed upon, we could do that.
Well, the roads do look better than when they first done, because it's over 50% built out in the subdivision. They had a lot of heavy truck traffic in there, and they held up through all the concrete trucks and the lumber trucks and everything.
Could we hear from the developer and hear his explanation? Would that be okay?
I guess. I mean, sure. Is it they here? Is he here?
Yeah, Mr. Van Fleet.
Morning, sir. Come on up to the mic and introduce yourself.
So, Larry with AF Van Fleet Excavating, we're the general contractor on that Eagle Crossing. And so the way I look at it is, Olson said that after a few winters, because of the porousness of the asphalt, the thing would just fail. And it just simply hasn't happened. So, and also with, all the truck traffic or whatever, I don't know, it does look completely different than it did 2 years ago, for the better. So we understand we have a signed whatever with the county, and we're willing to seal it. It's not that we're fighting it, but it's just if it doesn't need to be done, we don't really want to waste the money on it.
Okay.
So that's all we're asking for, is just to have it reviewed. Just go look at it again. And, we had the design engineer at the time said it's fine, it'll be fine. Vance Brothers said, why are we slurry sealing this? Who else? So the asphalt supplier, Fahey, said, it's just the way it is. It's that mix design. It's always going to be porous like that. Maybe not quite to that extent, but, it's a porous mix design.
Okay.
Are you willing to incur the cost for
Yeah.
them to come out and look?
But I would like to see another opinion. I think Olson's clearly got it wrong on this one, so I don't even know if that's possible, but if it is, I would like to see another opinion,
Okay.
from somebody. Because it's kind of right now, it's like 4-1. 4 people, the design engineer, he got it exactly right. He said it may not look the greatest today, but over time, traffic will take care of it. It'll be fine. And that, to me, that's exactly what's happened.
Are we changing the way we do this in the future, that we would have an inspector on site when we do these jobs?
Yeah, go ahead.
So if there was a problem, an inspector could shut it down or something? Or?
Yeah, so that was what we had mentioned in passing in some of the last discussions, was whether or not the county wanted to have a work session or have a discussion amongst the Board of County Commissioners of adding that to the subdivision application process, where we have acknowledgement of interior roadways being inspected at the time, have an inspector on site, some sort of, whether that be Olson or another KDOT certified inspection firm, and have them present during the discussion. I think that I can speak to some of Mr. Van Fleet's points here if we wanted to have that discussion, but to answer your question, that's something that we have from a staff perspective taken a long look at, because this is not the only subdivision that was not accepted.
So if we do change to that, then once an inspector signs off, it's done.
Yes.
Correct?
And to that point, there's a lot of counties and cities that are doing exactly what we've been talking about. Mark, you have some?
Yeah, just to keep in mind that we do, Mr. Knoll just brought it up, we do have other subdivisions that we're dealing with this on right now, and that if you consider an exception in this case, then we probably have to revisit those exceptions as well. And that Olson, we pay them to look out for what's best for the county and long term. And while their review of it last year when it was put down and when they were asked to accept it, they said long term this will not hold up as well as if it was done properly. And that's why we came to the conclusion of there should be this slurry seal. And again, that was a compromise. That wasn't what they originally fully asked for. So their job is to look out what's best for the county long term. And that's why we...
Yeah, Mark, we've already compromised once on this, haven't we?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, I think all he's asking for is for an engineer to go out and look and to review it. So,
Commissioners?
Could we, if he had another party, if it's something the county could agree, as long as there's KDOT to review it, or somebody that's qualified to review it?
I think we have an engineer firm on retainer that we use. And I think if we, if you allow for these inspections, if you just keep getting calling for another inspection until you find somebody who signs off on it, I don't know if that's the route we want to go. I don't think that Olson is being biased. I think they're just doing what we paid them to do.
so if we stick with Olson, are you still okay with us having?
Yeah, it's fine. If we do it, we need to do a meet on site.
Well, I agree with that.
Because the last time they sent somebody out there, some nameless, faceless guy, we don't know who he is. In the cover of darkness.
Right.
Not really, but
Right.
we didn't even know that there was anything going on. Next thing we know, it's getting rejected. And you guys had already voted on all that stuff before we was even aware of any of it. So,
Well, set it up and meet on site and have your asphalt supplier there.
Well,
Go ahead. I think Bill had...
I can speak to a few things just so we can clarify a few points here today. We did meet on site with Little Joe's Asphalt. It was not in the cloak of darkness that we did meet on site with Little Joe's Asphalt and their representatives with Olson. However, everyone's opinions are different in many different factors. So obviously they didn't agree with some of the assessments that were made. So that's the difference between not meeting with them and meeting with them. We can provide a cost estimate if that's the direction the board would like. we can email that cost estimate that Olson provides or whatever firm you guys decide to direct us to use. And then we can send that to Mr. Van Fleet and have written acceptance of that proposed cost prior to us going out there. We can hold that cost, or we can hold a retainage not to exceed that cost and have it paid for in advance. That would be my recommendation. Just like we have a cash bond currently, or a irrevocable letter of credit currently for the maintenance of that roadway for a slurry seal, and we can move forward with an additional review as warranted.
Okay, well, the commission's already voted once on, we need to change. Mike, I think I'm saying, what's your thoughts, Mike? Do you want to go back to this, or do you want to stay where we're at? Because right now we've already passed something that said we wanted to abide by the second edition or review of the thing. But if the commissioners want to go back and have another engineer and go back to that process, we need to.
I think we should probably stick with the engineer we have. But if he wants to do a review, I think he should be allowed to.
Jeff?
Well, I appreciate us using Olson as an engineering firm. I can show you over and over how they've saved the county taxpayers a lot of money. The first recommendation they made was to do a 2-inch asphalt overlay, which is going to be very expensive. So we compromised already once by saying you could just do a slurry seal. I agree, though, that it does look a lot better. I was almost going to suggest we wait. I mean, this developer's not going anywhere. There's somebody local that we deal with all the time, so we could maybe wait another year and see what it looks like. And if it looks like it's failing, then make them pay for it. But I think we've already made one concession already, so I don't really know what the answer is. Olson does a good job, but sometimes I think they might do too good a job. So there's been a couple instances where me personally, I'm not speaking for the board, thought maybe it was a little overkill on what they're asking for. So,
Well, the only thing before Vicki is, I've done a lot of these contracts over my years as a mayor and stuff like that. And for us to go back and indulge and do one compromise is one thing. I think, again, having the person on site, Bill, if that's what the county commission decided to do, which I'll be supporting, will help this out. But to go the second time, a contract's a contract, folks. When we have to do something, we have to follow our contract. And I would never go against when we make a motion or do something like that. But at the same time, Vicki, what's your thoughts?
and I just wanted to follow up with the ultimate goal here is we don't want this to get turned over to the county and then cost all the taxpayers the maintenance on a defective road.
Luckily, it's over 50% built out, and it's holding up with all the concrete trucks and
it's a hard call.
Rock trucks pulling in there.
Yeah.
So the road's holding up pretty well.
Yeah, that's what makes it hard to.
Normally we would accept it, be done with it, and then if it falls apart after construction of homes, it's on the county. But this one here,
Vicki? I'm a Southern Belle. Tell me what you think.
I think that I'm just going to say nothing. I just think that we did have a contract. I agree with Commissioner Culbertson to an extent that we have a very conscientious engineering firm who has done an outstanding job for the county. If we want to direct Olson in the future to be less conscientious, that's something that we could discuss in the future, but that's up to us. Do we want them to be less conscientious? If that's what we want, that's fine, but then that's on us as the county commissioner and as the Board of County Commissioners. Is that what we want? That's something that we need to consider. I know that sometimes asphalt, it's very, asphalt isn't always pretty, and I understand that. I can't, but we did have a compromise in place. with the slurry seal as opposed to the original recommendation that was made. And I think I was a part of those discussions back then with the compromise. And I think that I said, oftentimes asphalt isn't pretty.
Yeah.
It sometimes is, and it depends on when it's put down and the conditions that exist when it is put down. I think there were a lot of conversations that took place at that time. So it's up to the Board of County Commissioners. Do you want to have somebody come out and look at it again and see how it's held up? I guess it just depends on what the board decides they want to do.
All right. Doug, go ahead.
He's willing to pay
Yeah,
for
I
it
mean-
and have another review. So it's not that
But I don't think
taxpayers
that-
aren't out any.
It shouldn't be a case where a different engineering firm says, I mean, if it's a qualified engineering firm that says that the road's going to hold up, it shouldn't be one more year. One more year of use is not going to, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for 5 years down the road.
And we don't want to wait another year, then something come up and say, well, this happened during that 6 months or whatever. No, I don't agree with the year thing. We need to make a decision now. And I think everybody's had their comments. So what is the feeling on the board? Do we need a motion on this, anything, Mark, or just
Commissioners,
David?
I would suggest that if you wish to change the status quo, which is the agreement between the county and the developer, that a motion be made to somehow affect the change to the status quo. If that motion fails, then the status quo prevails.
Thank you. Okay, I'm open for a motion.
I move that we authorize Olson to go back out and review the asphalt at the contractor's expense.
Second.
Motion and second. Any more discussion from the county commissioners? If not, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson?
Aye.
Commissioner Cos?
No.
No. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Okay, 3-2. We'll get together and we'll go back and take another look. Mark, y'all can handle that, Bill. Okay? Thank you.
I'll just say one thing. Time is kind of the essence to get them out there because it kind of is the season right now that,
I know.
if they come back with the same verdict, then we would like to get it slurry sealed soon.
Good. I think that's going to be arranged.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, sir.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Clem, you came in after I done public comment. Did you have something for the agenda you want to speak on or something at the end of the agenda?
On the agenda?
Come on up, sir.
No, this won't be agenda. This is just history.
Okay, then it'll be afterwards. Okay, good. Thank you. All righty, Mark,
That was the only thing.
County Commissioners, before I move on, anything on administrative business? Go ahead,
Just
Jen.
wanted to read, we have received
yeah.
a thank you note from the Rocky Hempel family for the flowers we'd sent. Does the planning committee, do we do anything for a plaque or recognition when a planning commissioner goes off the board?
I think they have some kind of a recognition. I'll ask about that.
All right. And then last week when we was talking about the FEMA money and who helped get it and all that, I failed to thank Delani downstairs because any FEMA money we get, Delani does probably 95% of the work. She does the lion's share. She has for years. I mean, there may be some people signing off on it. It's got a title, but I guarantee you, Delani's done the work.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank her for everything she's done on getting FEMA money.
Excellent, excellent. Mike, do you have anything you want to?
Couple things. Just reiterate what Doug said. We really appreciated the many years of service that Rocky Hempel served on the Planning Commission. He always was diligent. He went and checked out all of the properties, and those are going to be big shoes to replace. Second thing is a question for the county councilor. When one of our SUP folks, the Call Valley Industries, apparently has not paid their real estate taxes in Wyandotte County. It looks like in Leavenworth County they have paid their taxes. How does that affect the status of their SUP? And we know that probably the SUP will have to be reviewed when it comes back from the court system anyway, but what is the policy and where are we at on that?
Well, Commissioner, had those real estate taxes been in Leavenworth County, my answer would be that we require a certificate of compliance with taxes during the process of issuing a special use permit. One of the conditions of a special use permit is that the holder of the special use permit comply with all state, local, and federal regulations, which I would presume could be interpreted to mean paying property taxes. However, since the delinquent taxes you reference are in Wyandotte County, I'm not certain how we would connect that to the special use permit in Leavenworth County. But certainly, if there were other state taxes that were due, we could look into that.
So, but apparently that would fit maybe into the category of local taxes. You're saying only Leavenworth County local taxes?
Well, it just says local regulations. I believe local regulations would imply Leavenworth County.
Okay.
Because otherwise, local regulations would extend over the entirety of the United States of America and all the municipalities within.
And just parenthetically and reminding everyone of what happened when this SUP was considered, they were behind on their real estate taxes till the very eve of the consideration, and then they quickly paid their real estate taxes prior to the consideration of the SUP by the Board of County Commissioners. And that is historical fact. And when we're dealing with this company, I think we should keep that in mind.
Anything else, Mike?
I want to put on the table the consideration, at least down the road, of possibly putting together a task force dealing with property taxes and putting together legislation to offer our local legislators to propose during the next session, getting local folks that are knowledgeable on the law regarding property taxes and getting, once again, making another run for getting our other local governments to at least interact on this, because it is such a huge issue to folks out there that when the legislature goes into session, it would be very good, like on the tornado relief bill, we actually had a piece of legislation that we were pushing from the commission and from government, and eventually it took 3 years, but eventually it passed. It would be really good if we could get all of the local governments in Leavenworth County behind some kind of a reform where property taxes do not spike every year. At least figuring out maybe a different approach. Maybe that it could possibly require a constitutional amendment. But I think this is something that folks are interested enough in that I'd like to see it put on our agenda in the future to consider it.
I don't have any problem with that. I think it's, we can do it one county at a time, but we need to all come together on this, because everywhere you go, you hear this. And obviously the way to fix this is, because it's the Department of Revenue, is to have legislators change it and not have it come up every time you get your tax bill. So I think that would probably, in my opinion, that would be an appropriate work session item to have.
Be a good year for it, because we get commitments every year that they're going to do something about the local ad valorem and the demand transfers, and I've never seen a piece of legislation yet that anybody put forth to support.
I think the city of Lansing, if y'all seen the quarterly newsletter, Commissioner, Councilmember Don Studnicka put out a thing, and it shows the amount over the 20 years that the billions and millions to us dollars that we could have used for property tax reduction if the law that's in place would be followed. That goes out to about 2,500 people. I'm hoping people will continue to read this, but I think, Doug, Mike, both what you're saying, the time is right, and I definitely think a work session. Jeff, Vicki?
And add more to it, that quit exempting certain classes of people who don't have to pay property taxes.
And I think our legislators should be invited to come.
Absolutely. And, we usually have a pre-legislative breakfast,
Yeah.
and that's always helpful.
That's a good time to do it, yeah.
But I think maybe it needs to be sooner than that, like right after the election. Now that you've won the election, this is what we expect.
Yeah.
And we'd like for you to help us through this.
Because if it gets talked about is one thing, but if you actually have a piece of legislation that we are pushing, this is what we want you to push for, then there's more pressure than to just have a generalized, we're talking about property
I got to say something on that, Mike. If I was running for office, a large area in Kansas, I would be behind this. You'd probably get elected governor if you would be behind the property tax reduction. Just having the legislators send the money back to where it belongs. It's a no-brainer. We will take it and use it for property tax. We'll sign any documents, even though the law is very specific on what it says. I mean, this is, to me, a no-brainer. Give it back to the people that can take your property tax down. And then, so you wouldn't be hitting one entity out saying, well, you dropped it a mil or you dropped it a half. This has to be a big total effort. Then take a look at how this formula, it may have worked good 20-something years ago, but it doesn't work now.
It certainly
It's all over the board.
It doesn't work for Northeast Kansas.
That's for sure, but I think this,
So-
is this,
Get our demand transfer to the $40 million worked out, that'd be pretty retroactive.
I guarantee you'll be seeing.
We could have a pretty good year that year, couldn't we, on property tax reduction?
And Chairman, remember, we already made a motion that we would use
I know.
100% of the LVTR funds
Yeah.
for mill levy reduction.
Not that we wouldn't
in
anyway,
Leavenworth
because state statute, but you made that motion. I remember it very clear.
County. And then another question, Mike, is this tied to the task force? I had a conversation with Senator Tyson about creating a task force for that very thing.
Potentially could be, but this is just, I thought it would be
Okay.
in-house for Leavenworth County so that we could get everybody,
Okay.
the school board members, the cities. I think the last time we were going to have our meeting, people felt a little threatened because they thought, well, maybe they're telling us what to do. We're not telling anybody what to do. We're just saying we need to talk together and come up with a proposal that we can all work together towards and push it.
Okay, because I was already voluntold that I'm going to be on that committee, so I have no problem with it at all.
Well, I just think it needs to start right after election.
I agree.
Get together.
November sometime.
And that's what her
After
plan
the
was
victory
too.
parties.
That's
Yep.
what,
Get
yeah,
together.
Yeah.
that's what her plan was.
Be okay, Mark?
We're,
Whenever you'd like.
Okay.
after the election, please.
Okay.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
All righty. Mike, did you have anything else?
The final thing is we did get a good portion of our FEMA money, so that's a good thing from the tornado and from the floods too.
Absolutely.
So
Jeff, Ricky, do y'all have anything else on this before we go on?
But since he brought that up, I think that those funds need to be returned to road and bridge projects, and along the lines of what we were talking about last week, we need to play catch up on the gravel road pavement program in the north end of the county. I don't think we need to fold those funds into the general budget or a mill levy reduction because it's not a sustainable source. So,
well, I agree, but my preference for first priority is to continue the work on County Road 30. That would be my first preference.
yeah.
But
And 30
I guess we
serves,
need to talk about it.
and County Road 30 serves the north end of the county too.
Yep.
So.
I don't have a problem with that. Anybody?
No,
Okay, I think we've
I
talked
think,
about it before.
I think you should pick them off.
Do we need to make a motion to that effect, or do we need to just?
Go with that at budget.
No, I think that's just marked
Okay.
and come back through. And Janet. Okay, was there anything else on Mark that you had? Okay. Okay, consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda is presented.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Stephen,
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson,
Aye.
Commissioner Cos,
Aye.
aye, Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to formal board action. Consider a motion to appoint a treasurer to Sherman Township.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we appoint Carol Floyd to be the township treasurer to fill out the remainder of the term of Andy Stafford.
Second?
I thought we did like a silent voting on these, or we all wrote down who we wanted to do that.
Do we have
Did we not do
multiple
that before?
applicants?
When there's
for
more
this?
than one. When
We
there's
did
more than
have the
one.
resignation from the treasurer of Sherman Township, Andy Stafford. We had 3 qualified individuals that did apply within the time frame. We had Carol Floyd, we had Jim Watts, and we had Angela Christopher. I don't know about a silent.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm not.
No.
Nobody seconded this, but are you ready for some discussion?
I'll go ahead and second it. Just one thing back to that, Jeff. I don't remember that. I don't want to do a silent.
Well, I thought when we had one, then we just made a motion. But
I
if there
think-
was
Oh, I
more
see
than
what you're
one,
getting at. Okay.
we all voted who we wanted
Okay,
to put down,
okay.
and then we
That's how we
tallied
did
it
it
up.
before.
We
Okay.
tallied it up.
Doug?
Does any of these have a conflict? Is there already family members on the board on all this? Because I know it's hard to get township board members, and we run across it sometimes that there's
Yeah, we can't
family
control.
members and relatives on the board, and they're small boards, and you want to.
Well, I did address that with Carol Floyd. because her daughter is on the board, but she did indicate to me that she will be going off the board at the next opportunity. But I will tell you, just from my perspective and my recollection on appointments on these, is that it typically was the recommendation of the commissioner from the area. But I served as township clerk with Carol Floyd on the Sherman Township on the Sherman Township board, and she has. And I also know Jim Watts because he was my supervisor at BNSF, so he was my boss on the railroad. So they're both good people. I tried to get a hold of the other lady, I couldn't, but we're going to try to hook her up. There's a spot on the Linwood Library board that's open, so we're trying to connect her with that. But my experience with Carol is that she's very proficient at what she does. She served on the board for 10 years. She's very supportive of the adoption of a fire district down in the area, and I think as the area grows, especially with the apex, that's going to be very important. I found her to be a person that is really easy to work with.
Okay, any more discussion? I have a motion and a second. Vicki, do you have something to say on this? Give me that look.
No, I
Okay.
was just looking at the application. I just wanted to know how we wanted to move forward with it. How do we want to?
So isn't that how we handle it? We just write down who we want and then turn that in?
I was not at that meeting if that did occur. I
thought that's what we did.
Guys, if we did, I don't recall it. I'd
just
rather
thought-
that be right out front. This is who the board chooses, and let's march on down the.
Well, it has to be open. I mean,
Commissioner.
Yeah, you read them aloud, but I'm just saying we write down.
I don't see one.
If there's more than one, we all wrote down the name.
David.
That's your prerogative, Commissioners. Commissioner Cos is correct. It's going, your vote,
Okay.
your name will be attached to your vote.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. If no more discussion, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson?
Nay.
Commissioner Cos?
nay.
Aye. Commissioner Smith? Fails 3-2. Or I guess we'll
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion
go ahead.
that we elect or appoint Jim Watts to the board for treasurer, Sherman Township.
I'll second it.
Motion and second.
Now, does this person have any
Same question.
relatives on the board
No.
that we know of?
And I called several people to ask about all of them, and that's how I arrived at this decision.
Alrighty.
And don't get me wrong, I have nothing against any of these applicants.
I don't either.
I just
I don't
feel that it shouldn't be family members serving on
I
boards
agree.
together.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
my only
because
concern.
they're small boards. It'd be hard to defend on any Open Meetings Act violations and stuff like that. That's my only concern.
Yeah, and I'm just
I
going,
appreciate these people wanting to step up and volunteer.
absolutely. It's hard to get anybody
It's
at all.
hard to get, but I still think if you got somebody that doesn't have a conflict, that's who you need to put on there.
Yeah, and I'm just going off conversations I had with several people in the area.
Okay. Okay, I'll start. the roll. Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson?
Aye.
Commissioner Cos?
Aye.
I vote aye. Commissioner Smith?
All right.
Okay, very good. Okay, consider.
All right,
I'm
Commissioners,
sorry.
thank you. I will notify Mr. Watts.
Thank you, Jim.
And send him his oath. So thank you.
Sorry we took so much of your time. I know you're very busy.
Yeah, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
B, consider a motion to renew an agreement with Spectrum for trunking circuit. Good morning.
Morning, Larry.
I'm requesting the commission accept a service renewal for 1 year with Spectrum, continuing the same service that we already have. This is related to our voice communications, saving $12 a month. That's really going to help.
Just think if it wasn't record inflation, what we could have saved.
$12.
It didn't go up.
$12 is $12.
That's right.
I read through all the
Okay, go ahead.
You ready for a
Yeah,
motion?
yeah. And one of the questions I think is we've talked about this. Go
I
ahead.
know. I move that we renew the agreement with Spectrum for the trunking circuit.
I'll second it. Motion second. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So, Larry, does this have anything to do with the phone conflicts we're having where some companies don't talk to other companies. The services don't match up. You know how
For
we're
instance,
not getting.
the issue that happened a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
Well, this, of course, has something to do with it because it's a voice trunk.
Yeah.
The result was, in this case, that Spectrum wasn't the instigator of the problem. The problem originated on AT&T's side of the circuit on a similar voice trunk, and then there's another player that was involved by the name of Embark. So apparently you've got multiple communications companies, you've got your T-Mobiles, AT&T, Spectrum, on and on and on. You pick up your phone, you might be hopping through 3, 4, 5 different companies before you arrive at who you called. Any one of them in the chain can, of course, have a problem. Your call goes the wrong way. You don't get a completed call. That's what was happening to the AT&T customers. We tried to work with AT&T, but we're not AT&T customers, so they just treated me as a regular residential with one phone and one phone number and created a ticket on my cell phone. They had a much bigger problem, but they didn't want to discuss it with me. I got very lippy with them because I knew this was a regional problem from everybody we talked to, but I had to go through the same process that anybody else would. So that's why we encouraged everybody, if you had citizens complaining, have them call AT&T, and maybe once they get pounded by all these calls, they would realize we have a problem in the area, and eventually, apparently, they did. I think KU had an issue with it and a variety of other larger organizations, and maybe they had better luck getting AT&T on the ball. But that was the latest problem. Now, a year ago, it was Embark and Spectrum that had a problem. Remember, we had this issue probably about July of last year.
Yep.
Maybe this is a summer seasonal event that we're going to start doing every year. I don't know. But that one was Spectrum and Embark, wasn't AT&T. This time it was AT&T.
So, and I guess my question is, I appreciate the saving the $12, but are we shooting ourselves in the foot by trying to save $12 and not going with a bigger company, or do they all have issues?
Well, in this example, if we would have been on an AT&T circuit, we couldn't have been able to call people that had a Spectrum phone. We would have been the person having the calling problem. As it was, we were the person people had a problem calling this time. So we flip a coin, right?
Okay.
Last year, we were the problem with Spectrum. This year, it was AT&T calling us.
Yeah.
Next year, who knows?
Yeah.
So the saving the $12 isn't really that great. Now, the cost to go with AT&T, when we looked at them last year because we had the issues, it was several $100s more a month to go with a similar circuit through AT&T.
Yeah.
So this was a cheaper solution. But if the service degenerates, that would be the only way I would ever recommend we change.
Okay.
Just because this is cheaper, and we seem to always have a problem no matter who we use.
Okay.
Until it gets excessive, I would always go with the cheaper solution. That would be my advice.
Okay.
Spectrum's not a small company.
No, they're not. They're owned by Charter, actually.
Yeah, Charter Communications
They had
is
bought
not
Time
small.
Warner that used to
Yeah.
be here some years ago, which was no small company either.
Yeah. I just want to make
It's
sure
not a mom and pop.
anybody we pick is going to have problems. So.
it seems
And $144 is $144.
That's
I agree. Do you have anything else?
No.
Okay, I got a motion and second. No more discussion? Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson?
Aye.
Commissioner Cons?
Aye.
I vote aye. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
All right.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Consider a motion to approve the adult and juvenile community corrections budget line adjustments for fiscal year 22. Good morning.
This morning, we're just requesting that y'all approve our budget line adjustments for FY22. The adult budget and juvenile budget line items needed to be moved around mostly for personnel costs, and they both stayed within their budgets. We just had some growing our staff and also like growing within our programs. We finally got most of our people hired, starting to work with the schools, and thus we needed to move some money around for personnel costs.
Any questions?
No.
It's not a dad, and it's just setting up what we talked about before. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the adult and juvenile community corrections budget line adjustments for fiscal year 22.
I'll second it. Any discussion? Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson?
Aye.
Commissioner Cos?
Aye.
I vote aye. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
All right, thank you. D, consider a motion to approve the Adult and Juvenile Community Corrections carryover reimbursement budget for fiscal year 23.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson?
Aye.
Commissioner Cos?
Aye.
Vote aye. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Thank you. We didn't want you to get too comfortable there.
All right.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, James.
Thanks for saving me time.
Thank you, Vicki. All right. See, consider a motion to approve a funding request for furniture for the county extension office in the amount of $24,200. Good morning.
Good morning. So we are anxiously excited about our move. We just visited the facility earlier this week to see the progress. When this process started, I had spoke to Mark about when we get to this point where we're ready to order furniture and for the new space, what was the process? He said to get a bid and then come and ask. So this is what we're doing. We received a bid from the Leavenworth Paper Supply that our extension board approved, as well as they were able to move money around within our own budget to pledge $15,000 towards the bid. So we are here asking for the remainder of that bid, the $24,200. The total bid is $39,200, I believe.
I looked through, I don't remember us saying we was going to pay for furniture, and I couldn't find anywhere that said we were going to pay for furniture.
Mark, do you recall?
I don't think a commitment was ever made to pay for the furniture. I think it was just a when they moved type thing. They've decided to come and ask if we
Correct.
have funds available.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I was looking to see if we had,
Yeah.
kind of like on that other deal.
Were y'all of the impression that we were going to pay for the furniture?
No, I mean, we're asking, basically. We don't have the budget to pay for the remainder. If we don't get help with that, then we're going to have to take a lot of what we have and make it work.
Beanbag chairs, right?
Do what?
You'll have beanbag chairs.
Maybe. There is space in the new building that we don't currently have, so we don't have furniture for that. So that's, the spaces don't make it harder to use if we don't have furniture to use, to in there. For example, we have a space that we would need tables and chairs for to be able to utilize. We don't have that current space in our current location, so we don't have that furniture. So that's kind of what we're looking at.
But the furniture you do have, you're bringing with you.
We will bring, depending on what happens here, how much we will bring. I mean, we have the opportunity to bring desks and filing cabinets and that type of stuff as well.
Do you have any other sources of potential funding for this?
That's where I was going. I don't have a problem with the request. I mean, you got to have furniture, but is this something the state would be able to maybe purchase for you?
I don't believe the state would. The way the state works with extension is their funding comes for salaries. And that's the rest of operations from extension comes from the county. So the only other option would maybe, we could, I guess, possibly look at some grant funding, but I don't know if that exists for furniture. So
I just brought that up because the state's the one saying they got plenty of money this year.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're flush.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mark, where does this funding come from?
Well, commissioners, it would not. I don't believe this would qualify under ARPA funds, so it would have to come out of our either like an equipment reserve at the county level or our buildings and grounds equipment reserve along those lines. The project itself is currently under budget, but the Cushing project overall, as you all know, is over $300,000 over what we originally budgeted, just because we're running into sewer line replacements and things like that.
I don't see bringing.
Would this
Go
be
ahead, Mark.
something you could take out of your 2023 budget?
well, that's,
after
the
first year?
15,000 is something that we are gonna, we will move money around to be able to contribute
You're going
that.
to move in, you're not going to be there very long, and then you can start on your new budget January 1. I don't have that in front of me.
Decision
what
right
we
now.
allow.
Yeah, they're going to need that.
You know off the top of your head, Mr. Lofgren, what we allow for extension?
Whatever their request was, I don't remember the dollar amount off the top of my head now.
Yeah, and I don't see you bringing old furniture into a new building that we're trying to start out with. That being said, don't come back. I'd make a motion to approve the funding request for furniture for the county extension office for $24,200.
Second.
Motion is second. Any more discussion? Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson? Aye. Commissioner Cos?
I
I know.
Yea or nay?
I just don't think we've really exhausted all of the options, but because I think there's other options, but
No vote?
yeah, no.
Okay. I vote aye. Commissioner Smith? No.
No, 'cause,
So what?
if we
What'd you say,
committed to
Jeff?
this, I'd be all for it.
Did you support
Sandy
it?
did it.
Yes.
And Mike supported it? Okay, it's
It
three.
carries.
It's 3-2. Okay.
But now next week, we're going to be in here with a group bashing us for county budgets.
Right, that's
Spending
right.
too much money.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Oh, Mr. Todd, I had somebody sent me a letter, and it probably should go to you. I'm sorry, I meant to get that to you.
One last thing before we leave, too. We've got some questions on like how things are going to work utility-wise. Does that go to you? Do I just send it to you?
Yep.
Okay, I will do that.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, consider a motion to approve the placement of historical marker at the Leavenworth County Courthouse. Good morning, folks,
Morning.
and welcome. You'd introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Commissioners, I'm sorry,
Shall I
I didn't
sit
interrupt,
here or
but
shall I
I
stand?
think we had
You can sit.
Todd
Sit is
Thompson.
fine.
Wherever you're comfortable, Joe.
Okay.
Either
You
way,
can sit, you can sit
kick it
down.
off?
either way is fine.
I like standing.
Okay.
Whatever you want.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Come on down, folks.
Good morning. My name's Joanna Schultz, and I am with the Equal Justice Initiative here in Leavenworth. Before we get started, I want to introduce you to our committee members. It's a very diverse and committee. We have Mrs. Edna Wagner and William Wallace from the Richard Allen Culture Center. Myself, I am the president of NAACP. We have Todd Thompson, the Leavenworth County Attorney. Bishop Tony Majors, he's the pastor of Glimmer Light Fellowship Church. Carla Wiggers, who is with the Lansing USD 469 School Board and also the Church Council Chair for First United Methodist Church of Leavenworth. Marty Crow, a retired state legislator and USD 453 board member, and Reverend Dr. Dave York, who is the pastor of First United Methodist Church of Leavenworth. And we have so far presented to several clubs and the schools here in Leavenworth and Lansing. And so we come before you asking for this marker. And people say, well, why is this marker important? So in 2008, the Equal Justice Initiative was developed. And what they focused on was documenting and memorializing the 6,500 African Americans who have been victims of lynching in the United States. Of those victims, 22 documented lynchings happened in the Free State of Kansas. In Leavenworth County, there were 3 victims. And when I say victims, these were human beings who were brought to unequal, illegal, what people call justice. One of them was Fred Alexander. This is the soil from the spot where he was lynched. Of these 3 men, the places that they were lynched, they were never given justice. They were never buried in consecrated soil. Their spirits have never been laid to rest. So what we come before you asking is not for money. What we want is a location that memorializes these men. And why? Brian Stevens says that the public narrative a nation creates about what is important is reflected in memorials and monuments. Who is honored? What is remembered? What is memorialized tells a story about a society that can't be reflected in other ways. So in our marker, it's basically 42 inches by 38 inches. It's on a 7-foot pole. And what we asked is that this marker be placed in a place of prominence here at the county courthouse because most of the events originated in this area with the old county jail. Now, some people have said, well, this is the actual point it happened. Well, the actual place that the old county jail was is in the parking lot. That is not a place where we would honor people that we're trying to memorialize. So the EGA offers us the ability to put it in wherever a county or place, city will allow it. Now, these markers are not just specific to Leavenworth. There's been one placed in Atchison, Salina, and Kansas City, Missouri so far. So what we're asking is that our marker be placed in place of prominence, like on the front lawn when you're coming into the courthouse. Are there any questions?
Commissioners?
What was the number of the total for the state of Kansas?
22 people.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions?
I've got just one. I had the chance to visit with, where's Carla? There she is. The other day, had to do it. It's good to see you folks. Some of you I hadn't seen in a while. This is new to the county, and I totally agree with what we're doing here. The only thing I would ask is, because I know we're going to have things in the future from different organizations, Mark, do we have a policy in place on how we come before, or to give guidance to people on how we go about doing this?
This is the first request that I'm aware of this type of historical marker. So no, we do not currently have a policy in place on how we address placement or handle requests like this.
My suggestion, and let me see what you folks think, see what you county commissioners think. I'd really like to get a few of us together and sit down and educate and go over this a little bit more. Maybe a couple of the county commissioners and some of you folks, we could sit down together. I had a good visit with Carla, who brought me up to speed on a lot of stuff I didn't know. And if we could do that and then come back before the board when we're all in agreement or we're all talking about plus having a policy in place for future endeavors, would that be okay with you folks?
Yes, it does. I will say that we do have a timeline in mind of next spring.
Yeah.
Putting
Goodness,
it up,
yes.
so that does give
we'd
us
we'd have it done by the end of this year.
Okay,
no
great.
doubt.
And it takes them about 8 weeks for production.
Oh, I expect us to be talking again and get this wrapped up in the next month or two or something like that. So spring, new creation, grass growing, perfect time to be doing something like that. If that will work with y'all, then I'd ask for a couple of county commissioners to sit on that.
I would like to sit on that.
Vicky?
I'm already a member of the
Vicky?
NAACP anyway,
Me
so.
too.
Yes.
Mike, did you want to-
That'd be fine.
I can do it. Doesn't matter. Mike, do you want
Yep, I'd like to sit on it.
Okay, folks. I think we're heading in the right direction.
I just want to address one thing that I think is a concern of mine, and I think it is a concern of a lot of people is, we look at what's going on in the country and look at the history and look at they're pulling down statues and they're pulling down, and I think a lot of us are concerned for our kids that they learn a fair and balanced history of the United States and they learn the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Correct.
But at the same time, I don't want to see us emphasize or overemphasize the negative, because I would like to see us like Leavenworth also had the first abolitionist movement of the state was started in Leavenworth. And I think, some of the things like that need to be told to our kids, along with the fact that these horrible things happened. And it's ironic, and some of the things that happened, some of their views on race at that time, Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal, and we know it wasn't equal. But not always was it. It wasn't always, in their view, maybe not quite considered racial terrorism. At that point, the way they looked at it was not the way we would look at it.
Exactly.
Yep.
Go ahead, Ms.
I'm Edna Wagner. I'm the Executive Director at the Richard Allen Cultural Center. And it's not to lay blame on anyone, but it's to share the history. And when we shared with the students in the school, the papers that they wrote, if you could read some of those, would let you know where we're going in our future. Yeah. We don't want to hide the past, but we need to recognize the past. And we need to recognize our present and where our children are going in our future. As I was telling the chairman here, that we're all well seasoned, but our kids will be those people who will make choices for what our lives will be like or our grandchildren's lives will be like, and their children's lives. And if we don't start somewhere by sharing that history,
Yeah.
then it's
And I
it will
completely
repeat
agree.
itself.
I completely agree. I just get disturbed sometimes when I see, Robert E. Lee being pulled down, and I know I'm a history major myself. I know Robert E. Lee was not a proponent of slavery, and and some of those people, although they were hypocrites in their life because they had owned slaves or previously, a lot of them set the slaves free when they left office or when they died. And I think we need to have a balanced picture for our young people, because I'm afraid what's going on in our country is we're tearing our country down and the history of our country.
My grandparents were slaves.
You're right.
They've shared a lot with me, and I'm very happy that the things that they shared with me makes a difference in my life of how I teach my kids and
Exactly.
my grandkids to respect people and respect one another.
And that's what we want everybody to do.
And one of the things that if I may, want to go on for a moment, one of the things that what happens is when you have events like this, people walk away and people think, okay, we've gotten our justice. But what happens is the unspoken results, which is, in a place like Leavenworth, creating two Leavenworths. One, a Leavenworth of privilege and who live their lives not understanding the impact that this injustice has on the other side of their community, which is terror, fear. It permeates from one generation to another. What we have the opportunity to do working together is to heal this wound in our community. And so that we do have equal justice in our community. Because if you look around at our community, we've still got work to do. Every place does. I've got work to do in my home. And it's not just always racial. Sometimes it's economic. If you look at Leavenworth, Leavenworth is a diverse community. So we have to look at what do we want the future of our community to be? Do we want a Leavenworth that has hidden wounds, that people still talk to their kids about the talk that they have to be worried about? Or do we want a Leavenworth where all kids say, this happened, but look at us now, look where we're going? And that's what Equal Justice Initiative is about. It's about healing communities so that we are eyes wide open, moving into the future for a better future for our community.
I think more important than that, John, is I saw some of the letters from the schools, which I thought was a great thing to do. Some of the things you read those are really touching. And that's the kind of folks we're getting ready to come up and be the decision makers. Then we're heading in the right track, so we have to keep going this direction. Mike, do you have anything else?
Well, we have a wonderful history in Kansas. If you look at the history of this state standing up for freedom and standing up against slavery, this was a free state, and it was bloody Kansas. And the war was on here. And this was kind of the vortex, the center of it all. And I just want to see us give our kids, to where our kids can still be patriotic, they can still respect the country, but they understand what happened in the past. But we're growing to more and more freedom as we move forward, and that's the way I look at it.
Exactly, and that's our goal as an initiative.
Right. May I comment just for a
Yes,
moment?
sir.
As you all may mention, you're seasoned. I'm in that margin between your generation and the next generation coming forward. I don't see this as a...
Are you saying I'm old? I didn't want to make clear. I want to clear on that.
I used the word seasoned because
I've heard that seasoned before.
I am the one who stands in the middle. I'm the one that bridges the gap. So the running joke in our group is I'm the baby. I'm the one that's going to carry the mantle forward in what the history and what the outcome is. I think we have to be reflective in society of the truth. I am a reflection of it. I grew up here in Leavenworth. I grew up in Woodland Village or Valley View. But I'm also one who went and served and went and came back to give back. And so I believe the community is ready to receive it. I just think that we have to be now the ones to push the torch so that when they see it lit, they'll see the real example of how we're supposed to live.
Yes.
And so we don't have to be afraid. I think we just have to open ourselves up to let the real reality of who we are be reflective to everyone.
Well said. Well said. Jeff, do you have anything on this?
No.
Vicki, could I ask you, since you're on this, could you be the contact for y'all to set up the meetings?
Sure.
And we can
I can do that.
We can get going. Does anybody else have?
You're going to have someone else besides a couple county commissioners?
Well, I think we're going to have a few folks like that, and I think they can decide.
Okay,
Yeah,
Y'all get together and decide how you want to put your group together, and just keep us posted. And hopefully, and for the first of the year, we'll have a plan that we can all smile about.
All right.
Does it sound good? Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Folks, thanks for
Thank
coming
you.
out. Good seeing you.
I think
Just a question on that. Are we going to address like overall rules about
We're going to talk about it
statutes
all. Mike,
and
nothing's off the table.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we'll be doing some more stuff than just
Okay.
coming back with a policy.
Yeah, that's
Right.
policy, and then what this can go forward and how they filled it out.
Thank you.
Folks-
Great, thank you all.
Folks, good seeing
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
I will, I'll schedule a work
Todd.
session on the committee so
Good.
that we can get a form
Okay.
how we're going to form the committee.
See you, Carla. You folks take care. All righty, I need a, we're going to table that, so we don't need a motion
Yeah,
on
so
that.
we're going to do on the broadbands. What we're
Yeah, consider a motion to approve a letter of support for Midco Broadband, if I'm pronouncing it right, Midco.
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 Commissioners, you have two letters requesting support. First of all, I think it's important to support the applications. These Midco and Charter Communications are asking for grants from the state to expand broadband in Leavenworth County. I think that based on our past experience with that, y'all have been very supportive of that as far as them asking for the grants. The second part of it is they both believe that any kind of a financial contribution that the county can make towards their project helps with their scoring on their grants at the state level. Obviously, did not commit to that. I did tell them we would consider their letters today, and if the board wanted to commit funds towards it, that you would discuss it today, and we could put it on an agenda for approval for the amounts.
I can answer that. In my opinion, no.
Doug shared his thoughts. Any other commissioner want to?
Where would that funding come from?
Yeah, we don't have the
Well,
funds.
again, similar to the request we approved a little bit ago, it would not qualify for ARPA because it is matching funds for a federal grant that the state is the pass-through on, and that's one of the things that ARPA can't be used for. So we could do our own project and use the ARPA funds, but we can't use it as part of a match for their grant. So
We can't go funding private companies.
it is a private project. They're obviously both private companies, and Midco is wrapping up a very nice project in the south end of the county right now where they expanded to several homes, and the charter application is actually for 5, I believe, different areas. So potentially, if you matched, like, let's say the board said we'll put no more than $50,000 towards all projects, that would be $10,000 a project. Or if you say no, that's fine, and we'll just give them a letter of support.
And the public utilities.
So, can I say something, Mike?
Jeff, go ahead.
So this kind of sums it up, the analysis on this motion. The state of Kansas opened up a new grant initiative to incentivize development and extension of reliable high-speed internet to underserved areas of the state. 2 companies, Midco and Charter, with existing infrastructure in the county, have asked the county commission to provide letters of support for their application for the state grant funding. The proposed projects require significant private investment by the companies. The state grant process gives an extra consideration to projects with local government participation. Both entities have indicated a nominal amount of $5,000 and $10,000 per application would be beneficial for the application process. Any contribution above that amount would likely help in the application scoring as well. Midco is submitting 1 application and would like the commission to consider providing a commitment to matching funds for the application. Charter is submitting up to 10 applications and would like the commission to consider matching funds for each application. The funds would only be committed if their applications were successful. Any funding committed by the commission would come from next year's budget or from capital reserve. Matching funds are not a requirement of this application. All that being said, I want the public to know the county commission is, including this, trying everything we can to get internet, high-speed internet in the county. When I started, that's one of the first things everybody hit me with is, when are we going to get high-speed internet in the county? My question back was, you don't expect us to provide electric or water or gas or any other public utility. So why is it the county's burden to supply internet? I haven't figured that out yet. But
I hope you don't.
These are the issues that have come up. It's somehow they expect the county commission to provide high-speed internet in the county. I don't understand who started that or how that came about, but that's the general consensus in the county is somehow the county needs to provide us high-speed internet. So this is our dilemma. We can't support one private company, utility company, over another, because then you opened up Pandora's box. So yeah, we're trying everything we can to get high-speed internet. We're bending over backwards, searching for grants. You know, we initiated this that we're talking about right now. The county initiated this.
Right. And I have no problem signing a letter of support.
Right. But when it comes to funding, that's where our hands are tied.
You know, this week we want all this stuff the county to pay for. Next week we don't want the county to pay for anything.
Yeah, and the reason I brought this up is because I don't want to perceive that, oh, see, the county's holding it up. We actually initiated this. The reason we're talking about this is because of what we did to start this process. But
and they are laying a lot of fiber. Ask any water district. They've had plenty of cut water lines.
But we can't get involved in funding.
Jeff, I agree. This is a business. They're going to be making money, and I'm sure they won't be giving anything back to us. I think you two both have touched on something very, very important. And Jeff, I appreciate you reading that because it tells you we are trying to get that, but not at the taxpayer's dime.
Are you ready for a motion?
Yes, sir.
Commissioners, I just want to clarify one thing since that's my RBA that you're reading from. When I put that together, the applications were still going through there. This is kind of a short time window, so they didn't have everything to me. Charter has now said they have 5 applications. I put in 10 because they originally said it might be up to 10. That's 5.
Okay.
Just to be
Go ahead, Doug.
clear.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve a letter of support for Midco Broadband.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion?
I do have a
Go ahead,
couple
Mike.
things. Just a point of for folks. When we did the comp plan and we had the charrettes and we had all the public meetings in the various communities, the need for internet was like
Top
at
of
the
list.
top.
Yeah.
And it was just it was amazing how that was like cream that rose to the top, and so we are aware of that, and we're doing all we can. And just a note of on these letters of support, when we did the letters of support for Atmos Energy, we wanted to keep infrastructure in the southern part of the county, and we did the letter of support from the county commissioners. They listened to that at the state level, and we prevailed. The infrastructure was not allowed to be withdrawn. These letters of support, although we're not attaching funding, they're very, very important, and they go a long ways to helping these things to happen. And it's important. It's an important step. But no, yes, the funding issue is. We're just strapped on money, and the taxpayers can't do this.
And if it's profitable, it'll be here.
Right.
That's
they
the bottom
probably will
line.
make a profit. I mean, you're not going to have it for 2 houses in a mile. You're not going to get it. So.
But there are a lot of state and federal funding sources that are coming forward on this.
Who seconded that?
I made the motion.
Who seconded?
I seconded.
Said, okay. I knew it was down to that now. Okay. Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson?
Aye.
Commissioner Cos? Aye. Commissioner Smith?
All right.
All righty.
We don't really need any discussion on the next one, do we?
Right,
I
right.
move that we approve a letter of support for Charter Communications.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion? Seeing there's none. Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson?
Aye.
Commissioner Cos?
Aye.
I'm voting aye. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
All right, folks. Okay. Presentation discussion. Second harvest presentation. Yes, sir. Come on down. Good morning.
Good. Thanks for your patience to get through all of this.
You introduce yourself and.
Yes, I'm Chad Higdon. I'm the CEO of Second Harvest Community Food Bank. Can I share some information?
Sure.
Sure, absolutely.
I think we already have that.
I've got that.
We've already had that.
Oh, you do? Good.
Yeah.
Here's our mobile pantry schedule, too.
Yeah, I've got that already. Don't have the fee thing, but I've got that.
So I just wanted to just spend a little bit of time and just share some of kind of what we do in Leavenworth County, some of the things we're seeing, and what's kind of how things have been going. We are working on an ARPA application, focusing obviously because we're located in Missouri and some of the Missouri opportunities that are out there. But if you turn to our very back page of what I just shared, you don't have this with you. I just brought this today, but I can give you my copy. So every month we share with our board of directors our distribution compared to the individuals in need per county. And so if you look at that fiscal year 22 meal gap, that's really our goal of distribution based on the total need in the county. So we've always kind of lagged behind a little bit in Leavenworth, and some of that's a little, when I look at historically, it's been a little different. Like we have, there's USDA commodity senior box programs, and Cross Lines Community Outreach runs the program that serves Leavenworth County. So we have senior boxes in other counties and not here. And like summer feeding, kind of the same way. You have a summer feeding program through the school, or in other communities we have our own summer feeding. So a little bit of that is just that there isn't as much of a need for us to have some of the programs we have elsewhere because it'd be duplication and overlap. But you can still see how, if we were really and this meal gap comes from Feeding America, so they really look at poverty and a lot of data and statistics to really reach it really helps us build our goal around distribution so that we can be equitable in all of our counties. And so, you can see about 1.5 million pounds of food is what it would take per year in the county to really kind of cover the meal gap, and we've really been, we're at 68.5% there in Leavenworth. And so there's a few things that are kind of going on that we're seeing. We actually had 3 partner agencies close in Leavenworth during the pandemic. We were working with the Pentecostal Church, United Methodist Church, and the Leavenworth Assistance Center, and all of those have shut down and not reopened their operations. So right now our partners are the Leavenworth Mission, the Salvation Army, and the Leavenworth Catholic Charity. So if you look kind of at this second harvest in Leavenworth sheet there, what we've got, it really shows kind of our service. We have, and I just shared with you our mobile pantry schedule. So, for September, we've got mobile pantry scheduled in Tonganoxie and then 2 in Leavenworth. So that's a lot of our support. We still have, like Backpack Buddies are going out to all the schools you see. Campus Cupboards is really for the upper level grades where we don't have the Backpack Buddies, but we have school pantries and Leavenworth High School, Leavenworth Middle School, and the Nettie Harnett Education Center. And so, we've really kind of struggled with how we're trying to meet the need. And I don't know if you guys see it or kind of feel that way, but, it really does feel like for other communities there's more food resources that are serving family just because of kind of what's happened here recently. And then we got a notice from Leavenworth Mission. I don't know if you're familiar with. They're trying to sell their building, and so they're our largest distribution point in the county. So if that would go away, that would even create more challenges for us. And then just kind of what we've seen post-pandemic. During the pandemic, we had National Guard support in both Missouri and Kansas. We had farm to food box program that was really ramped up. We had USDA commodities that were up, and now all that's kind of gone away. Last year, about half of our food that went out was through USDA programs, and just compared to last year, we're seeing about a 70% decrease overall in USDA food. And so it's just compounding the problem. We're still seeing really high volume and high need, and I think if you're in town during our mobile pantries, you see all the cars in the line. And so that's kind of just, I wanted just to put that out there just to kind of provide some perspective. We're really looking at it and what we can do. And I have heard that I think the Council on Aging and NECAP may be moving into a new facility and might be interested in partnering with this. I know, like Salvation Army has said they might look at distributing USDA commodities if the mission would close. And so we're trying to do some proactive things and get out in front of some of this. But it really is a little concerning just some of the changes that are happening. And I think even when I started as our CEO about 10 years ago and talked to the Council on Aging. Are they a county entity, and so we have some restrictions on like providing donated product to public entities,
Right.
and so that kind of creates a little barrier for us to partner with an organization like theirs. But our ARP application, we've seen a real transition in the type of food we're moving. We're now sourcing about 2 to 3 truckloads of produce a month from Feeding America Mixing Center out of Minneapolis primarily. You saw it with the Farm to Families, where a lot of it's more fresh produce. And even with that, we've got about 15 pallet locations in our refrigerated storage capacity. So right now we're stacking stuff on the floor, and it's blocking doors and entrances. And so we really do need additional cold storage capacity and added high docks. We've got 1 high dock in our facility, and there'll be times I'm leaving and we have 2 semi-trucks waiting to unload, and then 2 or 3 trucks that are going out during the day, and it just creates quite the bottleneck. And so we've been talking to Missouri Department of Economic Development about a ARP application. They have about $100 million in community revitalization funds. I guess it'd be similar to how like the Spark program is in Kansas with how that's aligned. We are hearing actually that we can use county ARPA funds for our match, though. So they've said that we can use other USDA, like there's a USDA grant that's out there right now, and so the direction Missouri's telling us that we can use other federal funds for the state ARPA match, which surprised me as well. I wasn't aware, and even up to they're talking that even we might only have to come up with 20% match on this. And so what we've tried to do, I've actually met with all the counties in our region. So if you look at this kind of box that's outlined, it shows what we put together. We've actually got architecture and engineering work done for our expansion. Went out, got permitting done so we could actually take it to bid and see what the cost was. And so for about 11,000 added square foot of refrigeration capacity would be about $3.1 million. And then we also knew just, challenges with food costs and fuel costs right now. It really has crippled our budget. And
you're not alone.
Yeah, I bet. And so we built in about $1.5 million for 3 years of mobile pantry support. Is kind of how we broke this down. And then divided that by county, just based on the individuals in need per county. And so that's where you see that at the very end, $875,000 from Leavenworth. That was really just to kind of put a more realistic approach on this if it was something that we were going to try to move forward with on opportunities through the state and some of those kind of things. So we've got several ARPA applications out to many counties. A lot of them had talked about VRO bridge projects and stormwater projects with their ARPA funds and had already allocated that. So we've kind of got different reception on, just depending on where we're going and those kind of things. But I really just wanted to come in. I really appreciate the opportunity just to share insight. A lot of people probably don't know who we are, what we do. We probably see that more in Leavenworth, really, because we're not in the Kansas City media market, and all the stuff that you're seeing probably is Harvesters, but Harvesters doesn't serve Leavenworth. We do. And then even that, we've got a great relationship with the Leavenworth Backpack Buddies, but they would typically raise about $100,000 every year, and we actually transitioned that a little bit. It used to be they would have a remote deposit on site at Geiger Ready Mix that would actually go into our checking account. So those donations were to Second Harvest, even though they were Leavenworth Backpack Buddies. Yeah. And so we've kind of gone away from that just for accounting reasons and segregation of duties and control issues. Yeah. And so they're fundraising now through the Community Foundation in Kansas City, but they had so much support beyond what the Backpack Buddy commitment was that they had a $60,000 credit going into this year. So all this fundraising they're doing, we really haven't even seen any of that money come through. And so, we've always tried to explain how much more we do beyond just Backpack Buddies. But, if I went into some businesses here, they would say, well, we're already giving the Backpack Buddies. Why do you need more of our money? But
okay. Any questions? Comments?
I do have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
You were talking about your private fundraising efforts. What efforts do you do through local faith-based organizations, or do you what is your fundraising outside of asking government for money?
About our annual budget is about $4 million. About $2 million of that is annual fundraising, just estimated. And then we get about $1 million from Missouri Department of Social Services that's related to TANF maintenance of effort. So each state gets TANF block grant funds, and they have to, some states do cash assistance and different things that qualify. So the states have to show the federal government that they're spending so much to bring those grant dollars back to the state. And so for our services, we can help the state show that they're meeting their obligations. So that's $1 million. And then the rest is kind of around programs. So it's, we get some storage and distribution costs for commodities we distribute. We get reimbursed for summer feeding programs through USDA and some of those kind of things. We really don't ask other nonprofits. I mean, even when Leavenworth Mission, we've invested a ton of resources in what they're doing. We provided a community match to, I think it was $20,000 we gave them to replace the roof. And so it was a little disheartening when they told us they're going to sell their building and close after we kind of really invested in them.
A lot of the community did. It is disheartening.
Yeah.
What about with Kneecap? What did you?
And we've got a great relationship with Iris. I wouldn't say anything bad about what they're doing.
I said it's just really sad that they've. But I think they're just burned out. It's
Okay. What question?
Kneecap.
Yeah, we've had different programs and partnerships with them, so I don't know exactly what they're doing down here quite yet. I know some of our staff have talked to them, and part of the Leavenworth Human Service Council. So I mean, we're always looking for ways to partner, especially with kind of what's happened in the last couple of years. That's something we would explore.
No, the commodities distribution, they used to do a lot of that through the schools. Has that changed?
Yeah, and a lot of that, and I'm out in the Feeding America Advocacy Committee, so especially when like Senator Roberts was chair of Senate Ag, we did a lot of work just kind of advocating on commodity programs or whether child nutrition reauthorization or whatever it was. But it still feels like a lot of that's based on price supports more than anything else and trying to impact markets. And so there's shelf stable. It's called TFAP, the Emergency Food Assistance Program. That's shelf stable food that goes to pantries. So each state kind of gets their allocation from the government for TFAP commodities, and then we're contracted with the state, and we receive the product, and then a certain percentage goes to Donovan, a certain percentage goes to Atchison, and then we just divide that up on those by case.
And you're talking the state of Kansas, but I suppose in Missouri you're contracted with them as well.
Thing.
Yeah.
So you think Salvation Army may pick up where the
well, the problem I think is they don't have near the
refrigeration
capacity
and the capacity.
or refrigeration. Right. So I don't know if they are totally. I don't know if they could completely do what was happening at the Leavenworth Mission. But.
Space. Okay. Any more questions?
Would there be, I don't know, just curious what your process is with ARPA, if there is an application, or well, that's something you guys would consider looking at or not?
Our ARPA funds are already committed.
Are they? Yeah.
Yeah, the deadline passed a while ago.
Yeah.
But we do have the nonprofit, a certain amount that we fund. You'd have to get in line for that, though.
You might want to go to the city of Leavenworth, too, and have some talk.
Yeah, and Mary Dwyer's tried to organize, like, the pantries a few times. Sometimes it's hard to get response, or getting everybody together just to try to get everybody on the same page. It's been, it's hard to get everybody kind of aligned.
They just have some ARPA funds that might be able to be
available.
Yeah, I can reach out.
To Paul Kramer.
I'd sure try that. We've spent ours, and with the way the country's going now, we understand your dilemma. Believe me.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't support.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, it is. It's when the economy turns, it's harder to get food out, but there's more need, and then when the economy improves,
exactly,
it's easier to get the resources.
Yeah, I know.
I think as I explained to you on the phone when you called and set up this meeting, our ARPA funds have been committed. We don't have any that are left at this point, and the county contributes a significant amount of our budget to Meals on Wheels program for the elderly. I don't think any of the cities are participating in that, but so and that cost is going up. and it will likely go up again next year. So
Is there reimbursement through that, like through the Meals on Wheels program?
we get a portion, but we fund the majority of it.
That's kind of how we are. We
So-
subsidize a lot of our work around
Yeah.
commodities.
Yeah.
I mean, we had to bump it 165,000, didn't we?
Yeah, and that'll get us to the end of this year.
That's just
Yeah,
this
just
year.
to get
yeah.
it through this end of
Yeah,
this year.
that's true. Okay. Thank you, sir. We
Thank you.
appreciate you taking your time.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Cup, would you like to come on public presentation, sir?
I thought there would be something come out of the executive session that would be revealed.
You may
You
have
wanna
to
wait
wait
an
till
hour?
after
Well,
lunch.
it's going to be an hour, so I thought you might want to speak first.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay.
And that'd give you time to go get us
Stuff
started.
before we start the meeting itself.
All righty.
John, and this shows what the swamp used to be of the Leavenworth Times. This is 1993. I'm going through about 50 boxes and about 5 file cabinets to relieve my kids of
Better not talk about too many boxes of documents. You might have the FBI coming to your house.
You know what I say to the FBI? I am a member of the Citizens Committee, and I'm entirely embarrassed. And that's why I don't go to any more of their meetings, because I would say something that I probably shouldn't say. They have embarrassed us. So,
Joan Finney was governor when you.
and I'll give this a copy of this to everybody. I'm not going to read it,
That's a while ago.
and I hope you don't take this as an offense.
You want me to pass them down? Be easier for you.
Don't take it as an offense.
This is,
This has to do with where money is going to come from for the mental health.
Thank you, sir.
An article of 1990.
you borrow this from the museum? Oh, thank you, sir.
Museum? No, I came from Woody Clinton Museum. That's all I had for years. Amazing how everybody comes in and asks for money. Totally amazing. But this article I just passed out had to do with a letter to Mr. Riley signed by the Board of County Commissioners talking about how much money it's going to cost the county. That's the last paragraph for the mental health, and it is going to be, and I admit, a heck of a price. And I had mentioned earlier, the schools ought to be involved and the cities ought to be involved. They got different avenues of getting money. But the article I just passed out from the oldest newspaper in Kansas, dated 1857, is when they got into the world, talking about how bad the county commissioners were to put the U.S. Highway 2440 on the ballot. And that's what this article is I just passed out. It says it isn't going to be put on the ballot for the people to vote on. We're talking about big money now. We're not talking about, we want $1,000 for the museums. So it ought to be put on the ballot when the time comes that you're going to recommend doing it. And if it isn't, it would be unfair to the taxpayer because they need to have an input. I thought it was interesting, the group, you were getting a little bit involved with history. And you know how when I come, it goes article, part of this, talk that. I don't talk about just one thing. But the people that came, and I'm going through pulling out articles about a good friend of mine, Herman Rappman, and how his boy used to, every time he saw the jets come in, his boy brought those jets in here to fly for our parades. And, you got the Langs, the Johnsons, Staff Johnson, more so the older Staff Johnson was a real good friend. And they're talking about the history. There's a lot of history when the Southern boys tried to get back to the South. What went on with the Southern boys trying to get back south, how many of those people were killed. And it is part of history. There's no getting out of it. It mentioned in the article about putting it out by the World War II. There ought to be a different area if you're going to put it up when the time comes. World War I, excuse me. So, but the main reason I came in today, other than to mention a few items, was to talk about the history of Leavenworth. Now, I heard one commissioner, I don't know who it was, but he said he was a historian and went into all that dissertation. There is no more history in Kansas than Leavenworth. There was just an article in a paper about down by south of Emporia, a community that has come back to life because of how they functioned. They didn't function on museums. They functioned on bars and jazz and this and that. So this idea about a committee that it doesn't appear that anybody's interested in, you need to have a committee that deals with these museums that can't get along. And they can't get along. First City has never been opened. We've had it for over 20 years. Harvey Home, never been opened, had it for 20 years. And that is a shame. Fred Harvey was the greatest entrepreneur I think that the country ever had. It was funny, my sister came in for 2 years, pick weeds at the Harvey house. Spent a heck of a lot of thousands of dollars to live here. Rented a house. A guy shows up and he's got his granddaughter with him and got another, her fiance. And he says, "Excuse me, ma'am," and she's sitting there on the ground picking weeds. "Can you tell me, how do you get a hold of somebody to get a tour?" He said, "I've tried this number, I've tried that number, and can't get a hold of anybody." And she said, because there's a situation out in the life of Leavenworth on the history that I won't bring up. "Well, I can probably give you a tour." Gives a tour and he says, first thing he says, "I'm not here to give any money." And you should never look at a visitor for wanting them to give money. You're going to be on the museum group, you give them money. So when it was all over, she said, "What's your name?" "Charles Frederick." What do you think his last name was? "Harvey." Now, if my sister hadn't been there to give that tour, there was a guy that would have missed out. His granddaughter, it wasn't his daughter, it was his granddaughter. He lives in Kansas City. And so I think you need to deeply consider, you need to add a little more money than the $50,000 that you don't have to spend, but if you had a committee to look into what they want to do in the future, then it would be more successful. And I think we would bring that industry in. One prison is lighting up out there, the state. Heard the other day they're just throwing stuff away. I said, "Oh my God, I can throw my stuff away because it's my history." But the state pen needs to be developed. The wing of the federal pen needs to be developed. And thank you for the ding dong. I appreciate it. It's very revealing to something.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for the document.
You're welcome. You'll be getting more. I got another 20 bucks.
Good.
Okay.
Well,
thank you, Mr. Clement.
I was here when all this stuff was going on.
Yeah.
So
It was great.
It's just a refresher.
Yeah.
Come every week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a good day.
You too.
Sir.
A good night.
Thanks.
Don't let us swamp. Don't tell them what we're doing.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that the board recess for a closed executive meeting for the discussion of pending litigation involving the legal interest of the county as justified by KSA 75-4319B2 for consultation with legal counsel for the board, which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship, and that the board resume open meeting at 11:30 in the meeting room of the board. Present in the executive meeting will be Commissioner Culverson, Cos, Mike Smith, Doug Smith, and Commissioner Stevens, Senior County Counselor David Van Paris, County Administrator Mark Lawfrey, and Attorney Andrew Holder.
Second. Motion and second. Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Mr. Culberson?
Aye.
Commissioner Collins?
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
All righty.
Let the record show that the board has returned to regular session at 11:30. No action was taken, no decisions were made. The subject was limited to legal interest of the county.
Very good. Okay, additional public comment. We'll start with Commissioner Stephen.
No. I just met, I met with Lisa. You knew who I was talking to. I was like, where?
Lisa Hack.
It's gone. Lisa Hack. It was a good meeting. It was a really good meeting. And she got me all up to speed.
Good. Okay, Commissioner Culberson, Jeff?
Not really. Just had a couple of, they call it coffee with Culberson at the Hilltop Market with some taxpayers. A couple different meetings last week to go over things like taxation and stuff like that. The other thing I wanted to mention was, I don't know if we need to, but there were 3 commissioners at the picture taking.
Oh, for the mark?
Yeah, but we didn't even talk to each other,
No.
so that's why I make sure I brought that up.
Yeah. Anything else, Jeff?
That's it.
Okay. Vicki?
Did LCDC last week and City Commission last evening. I think that was it.
That's a short list for you.
Yeah.
I don't have anything done.
Baker City Council last week, and I attended the ribbon cutting of the new Linwood Elementary School last Thursday. And Saturday I attended a Kansas livestock dinner, beef improvement, out at Murfield Farm. Quite a crowd.
Good.
I think that's it. Oh, I did miss the groundbreaking for the new First State Bank in Baser yesterday. I probably should have reached out and called somebody and said I couldn't make it.
Thanks,
I should have made it. I just couldn't make it. Just couldn't do everything.
Yeah,
And,
I was supposed to be at that, and instead I met with the United Way executive
It's
directors.
just hard to get everything. But,
Especially the timelines.
I felt really bad about not being at that, so we'll definitely have to be at the ribbon cutting when that project is complete.
Yeah.
Anything else, Doug?
That's it.
Mark, you have anything? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Stephen?
Aye.
Mr. Culberson?
Aye.
Mr. Collins?
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Smith?
All right.
We are done. Thank you, folks.